I'm here getting ready to wrap the wires going into the auxiliary lights. What I decided to do was drop the front of it out, run the line all the way up and into the back of the light. I'll put a zip tie on the end to keep that nice and tight, pull it all back. That way it's running with the sheathing all the way down and out instead of just to the back with a piece of heat shrink or a zip tie that's visible there, because that would not be attractive. So that's the way I'm gonna clean that up. So that should look pretty good when I'm all done. Okay, that's much cleaner. I still have to figure out, I don't want to use zip ties necessarily, but I want to figure out how to clean that up a little bit more, pull that up tighter. I can probably actually pull it up tighter from the back, and that will keep this tight against the bottom of that bar. Kind of want it to be behind the bar, but again, I don't know if I'll be able to do that or not. But it looks way cleaner with the braided sheathing on there instead of the black rubber wire cover going around there. That's a hell of a lot cleaner under there. Since I am changing the entire brake system and I'm going to integrate front and rear brakes with a proportioning valve through the pedal here, I'm going to start by changing the rear brake line. So I'm getting ready to pull this one off, and I've got a steel braided line that's going to come in and take the place of that one. So I'm getting ready to pull this off right now. If you've never changed your brake lines before, just make sure that you put some paper towels under to catch any brake fluid that's going to fall, because it is caustic to your paint and stuff like that. If it drops on anything, it's going to be the swing arm, which is powder coated, and it's a lot more resistant to things like brake fluid and gasoline and whatnot. But still, you might as well protect it while you can. So I'm going to pull that off. It drops down here and then runs along the frame. Pull that whole thing out. That way I can take the reservoir and the master cylinder out as one, and there'll be a lot less fluid leakage that way. So I'm replacing my factory brake line with a Galfer steel braided line. Always good stuff to go steel braided. Steel braided is great, one, because it doesn't expand like the factory rubber one. So when the brake fluid gets hot or you're given a lot of pressure, it doesn't expand, and so you keep your consistent brake pressure. When you go to get it, they are bike specific, so you'll notice the curvature of the connectors for the banjos. They are bike specific. I'm actually going to have to get one made for my front, since it's not designed to go from the caliper straight to the pedal. Anyway, it's also going to come, the Galfer is going to come with its own banjo bolts. You'll notice they are slightly different lengths. Big difference though is the size of the holes for the brake fluid to travel through. You notice that the one on the Galfer is way smaller, so it is going to provide more pressure because you have the same volume of fluid moving through a smaller orifice, so that's going to give you some greater pressure. It also requires less fluid in the lines. So just wanted to give you guys a quick show and tell on that if you've never done brakes before or brake lines. You're also going to get a set of new crush washers. Make sure you replace the crush washer, the copper washer that goes there. One goes between the banjo and the head of the bolt, and the other one goes between the banjo and the face of the caliper. And you might be able to see this one on here on the factory. You see how small that one is compared to the one on the Galfer. Hope you can pick that up. I can't really tell if that's focusing in or not. Anyway, just like I said, a little show and tell there. In putting my exhaust on, I realized that I'm going to have to move my crash bars because my lower fairings are too close to the exhaust. So these are the brackets I made last time, but now I'm going to push them out about an inch. So I'm making some new ones now. So I'm just going through the process of drilling out the holes for the new brackets. Wow, I feel like I've gotten nothing accomplished today. I spent the better part of the day fabricating new brackets for the crash bar so that on the right side of the bike I could get the space I needed away from the pipe. So these were the brackets I had made at first, and I'll come around the other side. You can see they were about 5 inches long end to end, and now the new ones are about 6 inches long end to end. They probably wouldn't have to be that long if I would have brought this bolt a little farther back, but that part doesn't really matter. As far out as it sticks, it's still going to be where it sticks. It just, depends on where it starts. But anyway, so I've got the clearance over there I need. I showed you about 1.5 inches right now. I'm going to create another bracket to go from the upper tab back to the A-frame. And so I'll probably push that in a little bit, which will reduce the gap that I have over here minimally. But I want to try to keep at least 1 inch gap there because there's going to be a lot of heat coming off of here. And I know ultimately it's probably going to distort that surface. I'm not sure there's anything I can do about that. If somebody has some suggestions, please let me know. I do not want to wrap those gorgeous pipes in heat wrap. So let me see what I can come up with. Might even be able to create some heat shield similar to what Luke was able to do on this side. I'd have to get some stainless pipe, one size larger, and weld in some band clamps to be brackets. But, necessity is the mother of invention. But anyway, that's where I am right now. See what else I can get done. In order for me to be able to start the bike and hear the sound of these lovely pipes, I'm going to have to get everything wired up, which means I'm going to have to get my brain for the grip ace, which will be mounted in the back somewhere, and it's going to be tied into all these wires. So what I'm doing is I've got my wiring diagram because I've got the manual, but in keeping the book clean and trying to keep oily fingerprints out of it and not tearing it up and trying to follow it and whatnot, instead of using the wiring diagram as I'm doing the work, I'm actually going through right now and labeling all the wires based on what the wiring diagram says. That way, as I'm working, I can go straight to the wire because it's already labeled. And some of them are pretty obvious, like all the ones that are just going up to the turn signals and whatnot, the actual plugs for the headlight and things like that. Those are pretty obvious. I labeled them anyway, but all of the ones for the starters, for the relays, the different things that are actually in line between the headlights, all that good stuff is just labeled. So as I'm working, I can go straight to the wire without having to keep referring back and forth to the wiring diagram to chase something down. So, it took me about 20 minutes or so to do this all, but it's going to save me time in the long run. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to get to working on wiring tomorrow morning, and hopefully by sometime tomorrow afternoon, I'll have this set up, my wiring all set up to the back. I could put my tank back on and maybe even try to start this baby up and hear it roar. Ooh-wee. So that's where I am right now. I think I'm going to call it a night. It's about 9 o'clock and I've been out here most of the day and it's freezing. Anyway, get back at it in the morning. Wow, took the better part of the afternoon after not getting started until late anyway. But I've got my crash bar reset to accommodate the exhaust. For me, the crash bar really isn't about protecting the side of the bike in a crash. I know that's what it's for. For me, it's really just to support the lowers for my speakers. So what I did is I ended up going straight through the frame there and using some chrome spacers and a bolt. I went straight through to support the crash bar at the front. I know it's more effective and more efficient when that crash bar is up against the frame with the bolt there. But it's pretty substantial, and the spacers are about 1/4 inch thick each cylinder. They're going through. I have to put a castle nut on the back of that so that the threaded part of that bolt doesn't mess with the wiring there. But that's what I'm looking like right now. And I have my clearance that I need up front. Whew, man, a couple of trips back and forth to Ace Hardware to get the right length bolts and all that stuff. So hopefully now I can go ahead and get to the wiring, which is actually what I wanted to be working on today. But got to take things as they come. Man, I have to cut this out because it's getting late at night, and what I don't want to do is work on wiring when it's late and I'm tired. What I did was I went through and depinned all of the connectors for the main wiring harness, and all these wires here are for the grip ace, and the control module will be in the back. So what I've done basically is just temporarily tied them in so I can test and make sure everything works. And once I'm sure that everything works, I will go ahead and route this wiring harness up toward the front, cut to an appropriate length, and appropriately connect to the proper wires. That way I can keep everything nice and neat and tidy and have good connections. But again, it's getting late. I'm cold. I'm tired. And so I'm going to stop messing with this because wiring is just not something you want to do while you're tired. But this is where I am this evening. Because I recently picked up this 3D printer, I'm having fun kind of making little stuff, and I knew that I wanted to prototype some parts. What I'm making here is probably something that I don't need, but I'm going to make it anyway, and I'll show the final product when it's done. But this is going to be a mounting plate for my relays for the air ride. Again, probably not something I need, but I thought it would just be kind of fun to make while I'm in my office doing some other things. This is just working in the background. Not super complex, but it'll be pretty neat at the end because it's going to say air ride on it, and it's going to say front and rear. So I'll have the relays mounted accordingly. But I'll show you the final product when it's all done. So here's the finished product on what I was printing on my 3D printer. Again, not necessary, but just something I figured I could use, and if I don't like it, I can always take it out. So this is going to be for the relays for my air ride. So there'll be one relay that'll sit here and one relay that'll sit here at wherever I end up mounting it on the bike. Just because I have a 3D printer and figured I'd play, I thought I would make something that would be useful. Anyway, so that's it. Silliness, but fun. All right, another night in the garage. Another night in the garage. So what I've done is I've put together the relays for my air ride, front and rear. I even made this little thing on my 3D printer last night. Air ride, front, rear. Again, overkill, but fun. So those are my relays. I just found out from Sam Ellis that I actually could have done this with two mini relays, and not done all this wiring and saved myself some effort and some wire. But that's all right. Maybe I'll change it down the line. But I've done that. I got one of those packs of things where you can make connectors. So this is the connector for my solenoid block. And it's 5 wires, two for the front up and down, 2 for the rear up and down, and 1 ground. And I went ahead and made a connector for it. And then my yellow and white are my up and down, and then I have a ground. And this is going back either to my switches. This is just temporarily taped together just so I could test it. And I don't know where I'm going to mount them yet. I haven't put everything in the bag yet, obviously. So far, I still have the compressor mounted below. These are the control wires for a pressure switch. And the reason I have a pressure switch is there is now a fast up kit that I made. So that's 2 9-ounce paintball gun tanks. And that is now a fast up kit. So what will happen is I will trigger the solenoid with the switches. The air will leave the fast up into either the rear or the front. And once that pressure switch gets down to 90 psi, the compressor will kick on to fill the tanks. It's all pretty simple, right? Pardon this mess. It's all temporarily plumbed, and all this is going to be neatened up. Just wait till I have to get to that mess of spaghetti right there, all the wiring for everything else that has to go to my hidden switches. So I'm going to reset the camera, and then we're going to test this, and hopefully it works. All right, I know I look mad wacky. Forgive my hair, and forgive this mess of wires and whatnot on the motorcycle. Trust and believe, once I get all this stuff put together, it'll look a lot better. So I'm going to attempt to test the air ride and make sure it works. I temporarily have, since all this wiring is disconnected, I temporarily have the power for my pressure switch going directly to the battery. It will not stay that way. It will go to a keyed source, because what we don't want to happen is have an airline fail, crack, or a leak or something. And with this going directly to power, it's just going to keep that compressor going as long as it can't maintain that 120 psi or 90 psi is when it kicks on, and it'll just run the battery down. So right now everything is connected to power. Solenoid block is just sitting up here on the fender for now. That will go in the bag. Fast up kit sitting up there, or excuse me, fast up tanks up there on the table. That will likely go in the bag as well. So let's see what we got. I think this is the rear. Yeah, that was pretty good. So obviously it was able to pump it up. Compressor kicked on just long enough to pressurize the tanks. We'll drop that. Gotta slow that down, Sam. Let's see if I can dial back the, try that again. It's a lot different with it sitting on a kickstand. I'm kind of afraid to try to do both at the same time because I think it'll be leaning over way too far. Let's see if this slowed down the exhaust at all. A little bit. I'll need to work on that. I'll probably change the valve that I have for the exhaust to slow that down a bit. Let's try the front. Not a problem. And lower. All right, once again. And down. Excellent. Should I try it? Should I try to do both? Let's see. Woo, she's leaning. All right. First test of the air ride with all the switches and the fast up tank complete, and I would call that a success. Yes, indeed.